Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Know Your Shit podcast, where our knowledge and pride in what we do drives us to be excellent. My name is Josh Cadillac, and once again, I'll be in the driver's seat for today's show as we learn how to stop doing deals and start closing customers for life. And the way we're going to do that is by talking to some of the most successful people in every industry to learn how they did what they did, to teach us how to build a business that we can actually be proud of, to learn from what other people have done. We have a great show for you today, and that's because we have a great guest in Mr. Dave Conway. Dave, thanks so much for being with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Joshua. Happy to be here.
It's great to have you, man. So what is it that you do?
I work in the personal development industry, so I am a mindsets coach. So what I do is I speak on mindset, educate people about the mind, how their mind works, why we do what we do, and what's preventing us from doing a lot of things we really would like to do, and to find the answers inside ourselves.
See, I had always chalked up why I do the dumb things I do to overwhelming stupidity, but you're saying there might be another answer, and I'm intrigued. Let me ask you this, Dave. What got you started doing that, my friend?
Well, my whole life, I always felt like there was something more to us than meets the eye. Used to get me in trouble a lot as a kid, actually, because I would get in conflict with my teachers. And my whole life, I always knew there was something beyond what we would see, that there was always like a motive. I guess now I know it's the mind in behind. But I always knew that. And when I turned 18, my mom brought me to hear a gentleman speak. And I always say it's the first, last, and only time this man was ever in my city. So it's interesting that I was there for those 2 hours. And that gentleman's name was Bob Proctor. So when I heard this guy speak, he was talking about ideas, and he was talking about ideas about the mind. And he talked about this word success, which is a double-edged sword, because, once I heard about it, I tried to create it, and I was unsuccessful at creating success for the next 15 years. But I was really intrigued about our thinking, why we do what we do, as I said earlier. And that started to lead me down the research of mental, spiritual sciences, and to start to uncover and get some answers to why my life was the way it was, and why it wasn't the way that I would like it to be.
Yeah. The aspirational version of what we'd like it to be, and then kind of what the level of misery, maybe, if you will, in a lot of people's case, that we're willing to settle for, the amount of less than we're comfortable with. What do you think you like best about what you do, Dave?
That's a great question.
I try to have great questions. Usually pretty mediocre, but every once in a while.
you drop a pearl out of your wisdom.
Kind of like a blind squirrel finds nut, news at 11,
Yeah. I love the work in itself. So a very attractive idea to me is, how good can I get at sharing ideas with someone so that they experience more curiosity, or even outright a change right then and there in the room. So my favorite part of what I do is the communication aspect of it. I think, we all, if you speak the English language, the word mind. You've heard the word mind. You've probably heard the word mindset. But what does that really mean? I start a lot of my seminars with the question, who here is aware that they're in possession of a human mind? And everyone raised their hand. Sometimes I'll even hear little snickers from people in the background, like, "Oh, like, where'd you get this guy?" Like, of course, I'm aware.
Who is this?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what a stupid question. Of course, I'm aware of that. Okay. Well, then my follow-up question to it is, well, what does it mean to be in possession of a human mind?
What are the implications of that? Yeah,
that's right. What role is my mind playing in my life? To my income, to my peace of mind, to my relationships, to the health of my body. What role is my mind playing? And then we start really digging into it. So my favorite part is just seeing the change. How do I communicate this information to take these words that we're all familiar with, but to actually start to drill them? Almost imagine like 100-foot drill or 1,000-foot drill bit, and we just start to drill into that. What does that really mean to have a mindset? What does it really mean? What does it really mean to change a mindset and to change it permanently? Because what we need to understand is that all of our minds are already set. So how the hell do we change them?
Absolutely. No, I mean, as you were talking about it, very much, very Descartes, like thinking the ghost in the machine, right? Because it kind of is this almost personality that we have to deal with and reconcile ourselves with. I always talk about the schizophrenia of being a human being. Like I got what I want to do, but I can't get me to do what I want to do. And the fact that I'm having this conversation is very schizophrenic because there's only one of me, but I'm sitting here trying to get, like I'm trying to work the levers and get me to do, I can't get it done. And it's all just me, and so sorting that out is a big part of this, this recognizing we have a mind and it doesn't always do what the hell we want it to do. And that's a bit of a problem.
Bingo. So how do we get it to do what we want it to do?
Absolutely. How do I deal with this guy? He's a problem.
That's right.
Yeah,
There's a lot of them in there.
It's a thing. So where do you think all the success came from for you, Dave?
It started for me in May of 2017.
Okay. That's very specific.
I can give you the exact date too. That's how specific it was. May 6th, 2018. 2017. And I was in Los Angeles, California. And prior to that, for a couple of years prior, I became a very dissatisfied man. And as I said earlier, I was striving to make changes, and I was doing personal development. I was studying, I was endeavoring. You can never put the word lazy and Dave Conway in the same sentence, but my results reflected like I may as well have learned nothing.
Yeah.
And that's not a great place for a guy to be after striving for 15 years. And you start striving for that long, you can become an angry guy. You become a pretty pissed off person.
Frustrated.
That's right, frustrated. So I lived in that state for 2 years. And then this thought in January of 2017 floated in my mind. So I wonder if Bob Proctor's still doing his thing. The insights he shared with me is in my early years from 18, 19, and 20, they were pretty profound. I obviously didn't understand what the hell they were exactly, but I knew there was something there for me. So I flew down to Los Angeles, California with my wife, Jacqueline, and we attended an event called the Paradigm Shift. And that was, Joshua, the most painful weekend of my entire life. And what I started to realize that I was what I call now top heavy. So I knew a lot of shit, but my results reflected that I may as well not know it.
Yeah.
So it's not about the knowledge necessarily. It's about the integration of it. And when I was there, and this is the honest to God truth, I think people would call it like a spiritual experience or a psychological shift, whatever we want to say. The honest to God truth, this little voice popped off in my head and it said, who else is living your life but you?
Yep.
And the answer is so obvious. Well, of course, it's me. But prior to that moment, I was blaming everything on the outside for my life.
Yeah.
And then another question followed. Who else is producing your life but you? For the next 3 days, I wasn't fully present in my own body. There was me, and then there was me hovering. I became the observer of my own self.
Absolutely. So important. Big fan of this.
And I was outside. It was almost like an outer body kind of thing. And I don't want to go like any woo or anything, but this is what happened to me. You
began to assess you. Like, hey, let me see what the hell this guy is doing here. Like, does this even make any sense?
That's right. And I started to reimagine my life. You see, most of us are all conditioned with this thing called a paradigm, and it's just fixed information. Information fixed in your subconscious mind. Now, the crazy thing about this paradigm is that the fixed information processes information. So if you don't successfully alter the software, you're going to continue to process any new information in the same way. This is what happened to me for 15 years. So I was gathering information, but I wasn't actually downloading it in. When I went home after, I was shocked. For the next 5 days, I was shocked. All the same things are happening. All the same people still calling, going back to my same house, same car, same environment that I left, because the law of cause and effect doesn't stop for anybody, but I was totally different. And I just couldn't believe I used to live the way that I was living. I just couldn't believe it. That's when my life started to change. Within 31 months, my income went from $5,000 a month to over $100,000 a month. Just a little over four, and this is, I'm talking about money, but also peace of mind as well. A little over
Sure.
4 years, the income went from that $5,000 to over 300. Within 7 years, crossed 7 figures in a month.
Beautiful, man.
All from the change in thinking.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that when you go from being in the bus to stepping out of the bus and looking at the bus and seeing how the bus is driving, that perspective that we have being a passenger in our own life just tends to perpetuate the same behavior, the same, doing the same thing. Because we have that myopic living of our life rather than looking at us from the outside, looking at us living our life and assessing whether or not it even makes any sense the way that we're going about it. And that actually brings me to the next question. This is one of my favorite questions. It seems like you've spent so much work on this that I love it. Looking at yourself from outside yourself, what do you think in your makeup, what you're dealing with, the person you got to get to go do this, what do you think makes you good at what you do?
I think I do have some natural gifts. But I'm in love with 3 ideas.
Okay.
The first idea I'm in love with my goal. I'm in love with the idea of changing my life and recreating it to the next level. I love that. I'm in love with it. I'm obsessed with it, with growth. The second thing I think that's contributing, or I know is, I don't think, I know it is, I have fallen in love with the idea of service.
Okay.
So I am in love with the idea of serving people. I'm in love with the idea of talking on your podcast today. I love it. I will talk to anyone that wants to listen. And the third is I fell in love with the idea of improving myself so I could fulfill number 2.
Yeah.
So in the early days, I used to invest in myself. So after that 2017, about 2017 to 2019, I used to invest in myself for myself. Like my life was so shitty that I just wanted to get out of it.
Yeah.
And that was my primary motivator. But then some kind of a switch happened in my mind where I began to invest in myself, not for me, but for you. Because I've found that the more I know about me, the more I know about you. Yeah, we may appear different. I might be a man, you might be a woman. I might be brown hair. You might have blonde hair, might have brown eyes, might have blue eyes, might have light skin, might have dark skin. Might be born in this country. You might be born in a different country. But what I found is inside, we're all the same. We're all working with the mind.
Similar problem, different perspective, but similar problems.
That's right.
Man. I have figured out that a lot of times you can't get yourself to do what needs to be done for yourself, but when it's for somebody else, you will. I know for me, when it came to public speaking, I was terrified of getting up on stage. And then at some point I realized that if I didn't get my message out there, other people were going to get hurt because they didn't know some of the mistakes to avoid that I had learned that I was going to share through them, the pain and suffering. They would have to go through the pain and suffering rather than learning from the dumb mistakes that I had made. And the second it became, I stopped worrying so much about how I felt about speaking and worried more about, hey, look, if I don't get this to them in a good way, they're going to potentially get hurt. It became much easier for me to take and do what I need to do. And it changed the standard, frankly, because what I was willing to accept for myself was one thing. But when somebody else's well-being was on the line, well, gee, I need to make sure I got this right. And yeah, I think that less selfish approach to communication, like how can I continuously make this better? That how do I get this to you in the best way, is a much better approach than just how do I get good at this thing. I don't know. I just find that moves the needle more for me as well.
Yeah, number 3.
Yeah, very much. Like how do I get better?
Yeah,
so that I'm as good for you as I can be, because it could really radically change your experience of how this life goes, and I want to see other people win. I really do.
Yeah, I call that a very sexy idea.
Yeah,
it's very attractive to think, how far can I take this guy?
And guys, that's a very technical term, sexy idea there. So you want to be very careful throwing that around. So let me ask you this, because again, kind of that outside looking in version. How do you manage yourself, like unmet expectations, disappointment? What do you deal with when how do I want to say this? Life kicks you in the nuts.
Oh, detachment. So you can't lose if you're not competing.
Yeah.
You can't fail if you can't fail.
Sure.
So it's detachment to those outcomes. So it's all based on expectation. It's all based on attachment to something.
Sure.
So when you understand and you can integrate into your mind, like to willingly give and freely receive. So willingly give, freely receive.
I'm definitely getting a sense of a taste of stoicism through what I'm hearing from you right now. That detachment from the consequences, having kind of thought through what the worst case scenario is and made peace with. If that's the way it's got to go, that's the way it's got to go. I'm hearing a sense of that in there. Is that part of what I'm picking up?
Yeah. Well, if you there's like, so Napoleon Hill has a document called the two envelopes.
Mm-hmm.
And in the two envelopes, well, it's actually I turned it into a document. It's actually an audio that I literally typed out as he was talking. So I made it a document, but it was a talk.
Give
that
yourself
he did.
some credit. It's my document, darn it.
Well, it's his. It is his document. I just converted it. I changed its form, and in there he talks about. This is interesting because he talks about, because there's so many schools of thought.
Mm-hmm.
So many schools of thought, and in this document he says to take possession and direct your own mind. So it's a two-part thing. So to learn to take possession of and to direct your own mind. So you'll have a lot of schools of thought where, let's say they're meditative or they're Eastern or something like that. Like they say, or stress management. Well, I got to like get control of this freaking vessel. I got to get control of this being, whatever the hell it is. Like, we live on multiple dimensions. We're a spiritual being. We have an intellect. We live in a physical body. There's a part of you that's in the third dimension and on the periodic table. There's a part of you that isn't.
Yep.
Like, get your head around that. No wonder everybody's so screwed up. So to get order in this thing, how does it actually flow? To start to understand that. So he says to take possession of and direct your own mind. And then there's another motto that many people are familiar with, and it's 4 words: live and let live.
Mm-hmm.
Many people familiar with that. Now, when we talk about that, we tend to just focus on the last 2 words, like, oh, I'm going to let Joshua, I'm detached from Josh. Like, I'm detached from him. I'm going to let him do what he's going to do, and it's not going to bother me. He can wear a wig today, and it's not going to bug me. So I'm going to let him live. But what people don't realize is the first one: live. Yep. Like, am I living? And you're going to find that the reason that we don't live the way we want to live is because we're attached. All guilt comes from attachment. Mm-hmm. All fears come from selfishness. All vices come from selfishness. If a person wants to eradicate fear out of their life, it's very simple. Stop thinking about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not rocket science.
Yeah.
So if I'm thinking about myself and I experience what I perceive as a disappointment or a loss, that's because I'm attached to something. The answer is in detachment.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. And so, I mean, that puts us in a position where obviously not just self-awareness, but being willing to say, hey, this is the car I'm riding around in, but I'm not responsible for the destination. I'm just responsible for what I need to do at the moment.
But then we're kind of going a little deeper with Napoleon Hill then, because he says to take possession of and direct. Mm-hmm. So now we're talking about like a refinement. We're talking about mastery. We're talking like almost imagine like a violin string or something. We're going to tune that thing up. Mm-hmm. I love the word refinement because it says that you're already in possession of something. I love that idea. Refine your mind, refine yourself, because now we're not searching anymore to try and find something we don't have.
We have what we need. We're going to tune it.
So we're just going to start to tune it. And how tight can we make it? And the second we assume something, and human beings like to box their answers up. They like to say, oh yeah, got it, next. And we don't explore. So the moment we assume, we are no longer exploring. The second we assume, we no longer question. So how deep does it go? 1,000-foot drill. How deep does it go? So when we start thinking, okay, well, I'm in the car. I do know where I'm going because I can direct my mind. I'm in control of the vehicle and I'm directing the vehicle. What happens from New York to Los Angeles? I've got a map, but what happens in between there? I can't even foreshadow.
Sure.
If I emotionalize any disturbances or any successes, and we do this even if we're traveling, we go to a new place, like, oh, I want to live here. We attach to the vibration. So it's in attachment that's our issue. So how do you become a goal achiever, high producer in a detached way?
Yeah.
That is an amazing question.
Sure.
How can I grow rich with peace of mind? That is a beautiful question.
Yeah.
Where am I assuming? Where am I boxing ideas up? And now I'm no longer an explorer. So I'm actually not curious. I'm actually just running on the consciousness I acquired 5 years ago.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, how do you get the W without all the anxiety that everybody seems to have that comes with it, all the pressure?
That's right.
Because what the hell good is it if you can't enjoy it? And so that becomes, why get the win if all you're worried about is now how do I go win again tomorrow? Where I can't just take and savor the victories that I have.
No, right. And no enjoyment.
Yeah, no. I mean, what's the point at that point if it's all just fighting? There's got to be a point at which you can savor the wine that you've spent all year cultivating, your whole life cultivating. Let me ask you this, and it's probably going to be a restatement of some of what you said, but I want to kind of put this finer point on it. What is the most important thing that you think you've learned in the process of going through this journey of self-discovery and mastery, I would say?
How hardcore you want to get?
Dealer's choice.
I feel like you're the dealer. I was on a walk with my wife a couple days ago, and she asked me what I was most grateful for in my life. And I said, it's the awareness that we live in a thought universe. Now, that's a bit of a mind bend, a little bit.
Sure.
It bent my mind. I got very scared, afraid it was very disturbing, would be the accurate word, disturbing. That really, it does start and end with me. Like it is all thoughts. You're a thought, I'm a thought, the whole thing, all results are the manifestation of it, that human beings are just distribution centers. It's a disturbing idea. When I discovered it at first, I actually didn't share with anybody for a little over 2 years. And I had a client that I was working with, a very successful woman, and I shared it with her one day. I used to do one-on-ones with her on Friday mornings, and I shared it with her, and just the energy in the room just dropped like a stone. And we carried on with the conversation for 50 minutes. Then I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "No." And I said, "What's wrong?" She said, "That thought universe, that idea that everything's a thought has just disturbed her." So then my mind was like, "See, Dave, you were disturbed. Now she's disturbed. Stop sharing it with people."
Way to pay it forward.
Yeah, just wrecking everybody's life here, And then I didn't share for another couple of years. But, I started to realize, I started to deduce, I'm like, my life is changing. Financially, peace of mind, my enjoyment of the whole thing, my capacity to love, my capacity to do my job, it's improving at dramatic level. And I started to ask myself, what really was it that did it? And it was that idea. That was one of the main components of it. But when I got disturbed, who likes people to feel bad? No one. So I didn't like Jana to feel bad. The lady, I didn't like her to feel bad. But after a couple of years, I said, you know what? It is the truth, so to hell with it. Screw it. I'm going to start to tell everybody.
Yeah.
I'm going to start to tell.
God, I'm sorry.
I'm going to start to tell everybody that there's two forms of thought. There's the intangible form, which we're all familiar with, which is in our heads, in our mind, wherever the hell that is. But there's also the tangible form. So when we see a physical object, we think that it's separate from the mind. It is not. It's just on a different frequency. It's actually on its lower form. It's actually on its lower vibration. Every single thing man-made on this planet is all the manifestation of a desire.
Sure.
It's all of it.
Yeah.
So it's still an idea. So if we want to start to know what the hell's going on the inside, all we have to do is observe the results on the outside. If we want to change the results on the outside, we have to learn to change what's on the inside. And a lot of people, and this is what's happened to me for those 15 years, I was always trying to change the outside.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that makes sense. You take and I go to the chiropractor, and you get massages and all this kind of stuff. He says, "Look, Josh, you see those guys after me. I'm the one that fixes the frame of the house. Those guys fix the drywall and the other stuff. If the frame's screwed up, nothing they're going to do on the outside is going to fix if you don't get the frame right." And so what you're saying is you got to get the guts of the heart of the thing right, and then everything else can then be adjusted. You can get the outside right, but you got to get the inside straightened out first. That's what I'm hearing from you.
That's right. So it's the self-image, the identity, ideas you identify with.
All right. So I want to take you to a little bit more of a lightning round kind of thing, kind of get your first takes on these things, if you don't mind. What are you most proud of in business that you've accomplished?
I think what I'm most proud of is the luxury that my company delivers. Over the last few years, as we've always endeavored to improve everything all the time, I would consider ourselves a luxury brand now.
Love it. That's awesome. What one piece of advice would you give our listeners?
You are now, and you will become what you think about.
Okay.
So get yourself a goal. And when you start to get a goal, make sure you build a clear mental picture of that goal. Never set a goal without building an image in your mind of it.
Good stuff. What one book, nail you down here, what one book would you recommend?
For what purpose?
For our listeners, you can give them one book, the book that you think moves the needle the most.
For mindset?
For what the book that if you got to take one book, if you could have read one book, what would it have been?
Thomas Troward, the Dory Lectures.
Okay. Favorite movie of all time?
I'm going to say a favorite movie that I used to really love. I don't know if I love it anymore, but I used to love it. Adaptation with Nick Cage.
Okay. Good stuff. Famous person in history you'd want to sit down and meet if you could?
Oh, it'd have to be Jesus Christ.
Nobody moved the needle more than he did.
I figure he's probably got some information. I got some questions for him for sure.
I got some stuff I'd like to know.
When I crossed to the other side, I said I'm going to form a picket line, and if you pass for me, then wait up, because I'll be coming up behind you there. And if I pass for you, I'll wait for you. But I got lots of questions, because the truth is, not many of us stand a snowball's chance in hell of freaking moving the needle very much, because we know so little about ourselves. So I got a ton of questions.
I think the thing that's really kind of, when you really get your head around it, is that we know so little, yet we think we know so much. It's amazing how arrogant we sometimes are about what we know, even though we actually do not know as much as we otherwise should. It's really amazing watching human beings do what they do. Similar question, but a little bit different for you. What person from your past would you want to sit down with and have lunch with today if you could?
Oh, Bob Proctor.
Okay.
He's dead. Yeah, he's dead now. I have some questions for him. But
I'm sensing questions is a running theme of people you want to meet. I got questions for you, bub.
Yeah, I got questions, man. I got questions. So, I've come across some new insights and awarenesses that I think he probably experienced himself along his own journey. And if he was willing to share those answers with me, that would be fantastic. But on the other hand, he's gone now, so I can just talk to him freely now anyway. So
Yeah. What one piece of advice would you go back and give a younger version of you?
get a goal, man.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that matters. No way around it. If you had to pick somebody to be stuck in a foxhole taking fire with, who would you pick to have you back?
My wife.
Good, safe, smart. That's a smart man there. It's a smart, safe answer. You can't go wrong with that one.
I don't know what her shot is like, but
you know she's got your back at least, though.
I got my back.
Yeah. What do you do to unwind?
I like to play games, so I like playing billiards or
Okay.
Poker or any form of game.
All right, we're on similar wavelengths there. I'm a big board game player.
I
My
love
wife
board
got me,
games too.
yeah, no, my wife got me into Settlers of Catan, and then
Oh,
after
yeah.
that, it's been a downhill. I mean, I'm up to almost 1,000 board games I own at this point.
I've got a ton too, but no one plays them with me, so I just buy them.
Yeah, no, I have a section of shame of unplayed stuff, and like the heavier the weight is, the harder it is to get on the table, because like, all right, well, to learn the instructions, it's about 2 hours, and the game is another 2.
You ever see that Parks and Rec where it's the cones of Dunshire? You remember this scene in there?
No.
And so the guy created this like highly complex, and it's all in the show. But they said the review on it was excruciatingly complex.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's definitely been a few where it's like, all right, I have to do what to do what. Okay, like I don't even know what the next thing I'm supposed to do is. Like I don't know where I am, and I don't know where the hell I'm going, And he just told us how to get these games right? You got to get a goal. Figure out what the goal is, and then
Gotta get a goal.
Same as life. Dave, what's next for you, buddy? What's the next project, the next thing you're working
on? We have an event in Arizona. It's sold out. Freedom Mastermind. I'm doing some talks down in Milwaukee. Just got back from some talks in Toronto and Montreal. Got some coming up in Boston. So we have some digital events, but a lot of seminars, a lot of speaking happening here in the coming weeks. A lot of travel.
I know what that's like, buddy. I did about 200 and it's gonna be almost 230 some odd days this year speaking. So
that's wonderful.
It's good stuff.
Yeah,
Road warrior is a thing.
I love it.
Yeah. Where can people find you, Dave?
Go to my Instagram, Conway Consulting. Conway Consulting. I had some reels up there. And also obviously go to the website, just www.conway.consulting. We'll do it. Just good check stuff. My website out too.
Dave, thanks so much for your time, buddy, and for sharing your wisdom. Kind of your journey of what you've learned in the process of doing what you do, bro. So I do appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks a million, Joshua.
And thank you to all of our listeners for hanging out with us, guys. As I try to every time, I remind you there is never a good excuse not to know your shit. Till next time, guys.